The line crackled with static, followed by the slow, deliberate clicks of a rotary phone dialing. A long tone rang out before a voice slow, ragged, and urgent broke through the silence. "I know what happened at the Blackwood Hotel in 1972, but I need to tell you in person. Come alone." A sharp click. The line went dead. Fred lowered the receiver, his expression darkening. Across the room, Velma adjusted her glasses, her mind already working through the implications. Daphne crossed her arms, concern flickering behind her eyes, while Shaggy and Scooby exchanged nervous glances. The name alone sent a shiver through the group. The Blackwood Hotel. Once a luxury retreat, it had been abandoned for decades, ever since an entire family, parents, children, even the staff, vanished without a trace from the presidential suite. No struggle, no bodies, no answers, just gone. And now, 50 years later, a retired detective claimed to have the truth. Fred set his jaw. "It's only 30 miles from here. If we leave now, we'll make it before dark." Shaggy swallowed hard. "And you guys actually think that's a good idea?" Scooby shook his head furiously. Really bad idea." But the decision was made. The van's engine roared to life, and they hit the road. The closer they got, the thicker the fog became, clinging to the asphalt like ghostly fingers. The trees lining the road twisted into skeletal shapes, their barren branches scratching at the sky. The wind howled, sending leaves spiraling into the night. And then, through the mist, they saw it. Blackwood Hotel loomed before them, its once grand facade now a decaying husk. The windows gaped like empty sockets, the wrought iron gates strangled by ivy. As they approached, the gates let out a slow, tortured groan and swung open on their own. Scooby whimpered, Really bad idea." At the entrance, a figure stood waiting. The detective. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. He barely looked alive. "You came," he murmured. "Good. We don't have much time." Without another word, he turned and stepped inside. They followed, their footsteps echoing against the marble floor. The grand lobby was frozen in time-dust-covered furniture, chandeliers hanging precariously from rusted chains. A damp chill settled over them, heavier than the air outside. The detective led them through a narrow hallway lined with crooked paintings, their subjects staring as if they knew something. Then he stopped. His breath hitched. His fingers twitched at his sides. Daphne frowned. "What is it?" He didn't answer. And then, he was gone. No sound, no movement, just gone. Velma swung her flashlight around wildly. Nothing. No open doors. No footprints. Shaggy's voice was barely a whisper. "We need to leave. Now." Scooby nodded frantically, but deep within the hotel, something moved. A slow, deliberate step. Then another. A presence watching, waiting. And for the first time that night, they realized whatever happened in 1972 was happening again. The wind rattled the broken windows, a hollow, unearthly howl sweeping through the empty halls. Beneath their feet, the wooden floors groaned under the weight of their hesitant steps. The corridor stretched into darkness, swallowing the dim glow of Velma's flashlight. She trailed her fingers along the faded wallpaper, searching, hoping for some rational explanation. A hidden panel. A secret door. Anything. But there was nothing. No trapdoors. No hidden passages. Just the stifling silence of a place long forgotten. Fred turned toward the entrance. "Maybe we should." Bang! The front door slammed shut with a deafening finality. Everyone spun around, eyes wide, breath caught in their throats. Velma lunged for the handle, rattling the metal with desperate force. "It's locked." Daphne exhaled sharply, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're trapped." Then, from the shadows, a sound rose. A slow, deliberate tap, tap, tap. Shaggy swallowed hard, his voice shaking. "I don't like that sound." The tapping grew louder, echoing off the walls. Velma lifted her flashlight, slicing through the dust-heavy air, landing on the grand staircase. The steps were empty, vanishing into the darkness above. The footsteps stopped. Silence pressed against them, thick and suffocating. Fred squared his shoulders. "We need to find the truth." Shaggy raised a trembling hand. Or hear me out, we don't. Daphne ignored him, eyes locked on Velma. Where do we start? Velma adjusted her glasses. The presidential suite. That's where the family vanished. Their footsteps echoed as they ascended the staircase, each step pulling them deeper into the unknown. The air grew heavier, dense with something unseen. A strange metallic scent filled the corridor, sharp and unsettling. Drip, drip. Velma stopped. Do you smell that? Daphne hesitated. It smells like... But she never finished. Scooby let out a low, warning growl. Everyone froze. Fred's voice was steady, but his fingers curled into fists. Scooby, what is it? The Great Dane's nose twitched. His ears flattened against his head. His eyes locked onto something just beyond the landing. Thena floorboard creaked. Not beneath them. Above them. A whisper drifted down, soft and breathless. Why, are you here? Velma's flashlight flickered. For a split second, the beam caught something. A face. Gaunt. Hollow-eyed. Watching. Thengone. Shaggy screamed. The group stumbled back, hearts hammering, adrenaline surging. Fred stepped forward, voice steady but firm. Who's there? Silence. The Blackwood Hotel was breathing, remembering, waiting. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of dust and something more sinister, something old and rotting, sealed away for decades. Fred kept his gaze locked ahead. We keep moving. The presidential suite is at the end of the hall. Velma adjusted her glasses, casting a glance at Scooby. His ears were pinned back, tail tucked low. Beside him, Shaggy clung to his fur, eyes darting between the shifting shadows. And we're sure about this? He stammered. Daphne's voice was quieter than usual. We don't have a choice. Their footsteps echoed as they reached the second floor, the weight of the building pressing down on them. The wallpaper peeled in long, curling strips, exposing cracked plaster beneath. Crooked picture frames hung along the corridor, their glass shattered, their subjects barely visible beneath years of grime. At the far end of the hall, the massive double doors of room 717 stood waiting, their brass handles tarnished with time. The last known location of the Blackwood family. Velma hesitated, fingers grazing the door handle. It twisted, with an unsettling ease. Click. The door creaked open. Inside, time had refused to move forward. A velvet chase lounge sat untouched in the center of the room. On the coffee table beside it, a half-empty teacup rested on its saucer, its contents dried to a dark stain. The canopy bed remained unmade, silk sheets pulled back, as if someone had just risen from sleep. But the most unsettling thing sat in the middle of the floor. A dollhouse, an exact replica of the Blackwood Hotel. Velma stepped forward, running a hand along its intricate frame. This shouldn't be here. Fred frowned. What do you mean? She brushed away a thin layer of dust. This dollhouse is in perfect condition. No decay, no dust. Someone's been taking care of it. Shaggy took a slow step back. Or maybe it takes care of itself? Scooby let out a low whimper. Daphne's gaze flicked toward the far side of the room. The closet doors were slightly ajar. Someone's been living here. Velma pulled open an old notebook from the desk, flipping through its brittle pages. These are logs. Dates: the 17th of March, 1972, the 2nd of April, 1989, the 5th of July, 2006. Fred leaned over her shoulder. What do they mean? Velma turned the page and froze. The final entry had today's date. A single heavy heartbeat pounded in the silence. Daphne took a step back from the closet. We're not alone. A soft creak came from inside. Something shifted in the darkness. A footstep. Thena whisper. You shouldn't be here. The closet doors slammed open. Shaggy screamed as a figure lunged, barely visible in the dim light. Fred reacted fast, grabbing a lamp from the table and swinging hard, knocking the figure aside. Run! Daphne's voice cut through the panic as she grabbed Velma's wrist, dragging her toward the door. They bolted down the hall, footsteps thundering against the rotting wood. Behind them, something moved too fast, too unnatural. The hotel wasn't empty. It never had been. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the long, narrow hallway. A distant door slammed open, then shut just as quickly. Adrenaline surged, but it wasn't enough to drown out the terror pounding in their chests. The Blackwood Hotel was shifting, breathing, aware of their every move. Fred pushed ahead, his voice urgent. "This way." The others followed, their footsteps reverberating off the walls. Scooby's breath came in ragged gasps, his eyes darting wildly at the shifting shadows. Behind them, something followed. The thud of footsteps grew heavier, closer. Shaggy barely had time to scream. "It's right behind us." Velma flicked her flashlight back. Nothing. No figure. But the sensation of eyes watching tracking them was undeniable. Daphne's voice was tight. "Where's the exit?" Fred pressed forward. "Just ahead. We can make it to the lobby." But the hallway changed. The walls pressed in, twisting, closing. A deep, unnatural hum vibrated through the air. Velma halted abruptly. This isn't right. And she was right. What should have been a straight path was now a maze of corridors, dark and suffocating. Shaggy spun in place. "We're going in circles!" Fred turned, eyes scanning. "Stay close. Keep moving." The air thickened, oppressive. The floor beneath them was sticky, damp with something unseen. The smell rose decay, old and festering. A whisper carried through the air. Low, guttural. It wasn't a voice. It was something worse. Scooby whimpered. Velma's breath hitched. "We need to find the source. Whatever's happening, it's tied to the hotel." Fred nodded. "Then we find it and end it." They pressed forward, deeper into the unnatural maze. With every turn, something unseen pressed closer. The walls shifted. The ceiling felt lower. A door appeared. Old, warped. A spiral was carved into the wood, intricate, twisted. Velma traced it with her fingers, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is it." Fred gripped the handle. The door creaked open. Inside, shadows pooled in every corner. A single lamp flickered, casting a weak glow. The room had no windows, no other doors. Only one object sat in the center. The dollhouse. The Blackwood Hotel, perfectly replicated. But now, something had changed. A figure stood beside it, small, motionless. A child? Number? The door creaked behind them. The figure remained still, too still. Then, a whisper. "Why won't you leave me alone?" The eerie hum returned, vibrating through the room. Fred stepped forward, voice steady. "Who are you?" The figure didn't move, didn't speak. It only stared, hollow eyes fixed on them. Then, it faded into shadow. The room pulsed. The walls began to breathe. The low growl returned, louder, closer. Daphne gasped. "It's real, it's all real." Velma yanked a notebook from her bag, flipping through pages. "This is it, the final piece." Fred's jaw clenched. "What do you mean?" Velma's voice hardened. "The Blackwood family didn't vanish. They were taken by something that has lived here for decades." The growl turned into laughter, low, mocking. The shadows shifted, circling them. The door was gone, and at the far end of the room, the figure stood once more, unmoving, blocking their only escape. Shaggy's breath hitched. "It's blocking us!" The walls groaned, closing in. No more exits. No more escape. The hotel wasn't letting them go. The sound of heavy breathing filled the suffocating air, blending with the unsettling creak of shifting walls. The temperature had plunged, the atmosphere thick with a presence, as if the hotel itself was aware of their every movement. Fred stood firm at the front, his jaw clenched with determination. "We have to stay focused. Whatever this is, we can't let it control us." Daphne clutched his arm, her fingers digging in. "But Fred, we're trapped. There's no way out." A shadowy figure hovered just beyond the doorway, its form flickering between substance and mist. It fed on their fear, solidifying with every heartbeat. Velma's sharp gaze locked onto it, her voice hushed but sure. "It's not just the hotel. It's the Blackwood family. The spirit never left. It's been trapped here all along, and it's not alone." Shaggy swallowed hard, his face pale. So we've been running from ghosts? Beside him, Scooby whimpered, tail tucked between his legs. He nudged Shaggy, trembling from head to paw. Fred stepped forward, his voice low, unwavering. We need answers, now. Daphne's voice cracked, but her stance remained strong. Number, we need to end this. The figure stood motionless, flickering between human and shadow, its hollow eyes locked onto them. Then it spoke. You shouldn't have come here. The hotel never forgets. A deep, reverberating hum vibrated through the walls, pressing against them. Fred's voice sliced through the eerie silence. Who are you? What do you want? The figure hesitated before stepping closer, its presence intensifying. I am the key. I have kept this place hidden, the truth buried where it belongs. Velma stiffened, realization dawning. The key? What do you mean? A dark chuckle rippled through the air, low and menacing. The Blackwoods were never victims. They were part of this from the beginning. You shouldn't be here. Shaggy's voice trembled. Wait, you mean they're still here? The figure's empty gaze bore into him. They never left, and neither will you. A deep rumbling coursed through the walls, as if the entire structure had come alive. Fred threw out a hand, signaling the group to stay close. We need to find the source. Velma turned sharply, pointing toward the room's center, where a decrepit dollhouse loomed in the shadows. The dollhouse, it's always been the key. This is where it started. They approached slowly, their footsteps muffled by the thick, suffocating air. Fred reached out, fingertips grazing the miniature hotel. A sickly glow pulsed from within. This is it. The room convulsed violently, the figure's voice booming, enraged. You think you can stop it? The truth will never die. The curse is eternal. The walls groaned, pressing inward. The air became a crushing force. Fred tightened his grip on the dollhouse. We're not leaving until this ends. With a sudden, deafening crack, the dollhouse split in two. Tiny fragments scattered across the floor as the miniature hotel collapsed. The figure let out a shriek, a high, piercing wail that fractured the very air around them. The walls splintered. The ceiling caved. The ground beneath them lurched as the entity flickered, its form dissolving into nothingness. Fred's voice rang through the chaos. It's over. We're getting out of here. They sprinted toward the front door, the building disintegrating around them. The door burst open just as they reached it, and with a final, earth-shaking roar, the hotel crumbled into the void. Silence. Outside, the wind howled around them. They gasped for breath, shaken but alive. And yet, even as they stood under the night sky, one thought clawed at the edges of their minds. Had it truly ended? The wind howled through the hollow night, whipping past the group as they stood amidst the smoldering ruins of the Blackwood Hotel. The towering structure, once grand and imposing, was now nothing more than a heap of charred debris. Yet despite its destruction, an oppressive weight still lingered in the air. Fred wiped a hand across his forehead, his voice measured, tinged with exhaustion. We made it. We're out. But Velma wasn't convinced. Her gaze remained locked on the ruins, brows furrowed in deep thought. No, Fred. It's not over yet. Shaggy turned toward her, his expression a mix of confusion and desperation. What do you mean? The hotel's gone, the mystery's solved, right? Velma shook her head, her tone grave. I wish it were that simple. The Blackwoods may be gone, but there's something else, something we still haven't uncovered. Fred's eyes narrowed as he sensed the gravity of her words. Velma, what are you saying? She hesitated for a moment before answering, her voice barely above a whisper. The Blackwoods weren't just hiding the hotel. They were hiding something much worse. And whatever it is, it's still out there. Daphne folded her arms across her chest, the uneasy flicker of the firelight reflecting in her eyes. Worse? What could be worse than that place? Velma exhaled, staring beyond the wreckage toward the surrounding woods. The curse was never just about the hotel. The Blackwood family was trying to bury something much older, something more powerful than their own spirits. They weren't just keeping their ancestors trapped, they were keeping something else from escaping. A sudden gust of wind cut through them, as if the land itself recoiled at her words. Shaggy shivered, clutching Scooby closer. You're saying the hotel was like some kind of supernatural prison? Velma nodded grimly. Exactly. And now that it's gone, whatever was inside isn't locked away anymore. Fred turned, his jaw tight. So what now? What do we do? Velma glanced at the ruins once more before meeting his gaze. We stay vigilant. The land may look empty, but something tells me this isn't over. Daphne shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward the distant tree line. You really think something else is out there? Velma nodded, her voice calm but certain. I know it is. We may not see it yet, but it's waiting. And when the time comes, we need to be ready. Fred exhaled, looking toward the open road. We go back to our lives, but we don't forget. The world's a lot stranger than we thought, and if something else is lurking out there, we'll be ready for it. Shaggy turned to him, an eyebrow raised. Ready? Man, I was hoping this was a one-time thing. Fred smirked, shaking his head. Let's just hope we don't run into anything else like this. The low rumble of the Mystery Machine's engine broke the silence as they climbed inside. As they pulled away, the night closed in, the embers of the Blackwood Hotel still glowing in the distance. The wind carried the last whispers of the past into the darkness, fading into the unknown. But as they drove off into the night, one question remained. Was it truly over?